السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today we are going briefly to cover Unit 13 of the course M256 Software Development with Java. In this unit we concentrate on building the user interface of the hospital system. The course M256 doesn't emphasize very much on implementation. It's more on design work other than implementation, and you find that you'll have a lot of code ready. You just need to complete that existing code regarding the implementation of the graphical user interface. So in this unit, briefly, we will attach the user interface to the core system, and we will describe the systematic approaches of building the user interface, talk about some common issues that arise in building graphical user interfaces and building testing to be sure that we are meeting the user needs. The chapter or the unit will use the Cottage hospital system, which is a smaller system than the hospital system described earlier. The Cottage hospital consists of wards, each of which has patients in it. There are no doctors or teams. This makes things easier for us to study the implementation of the user interface for such a simple system. All what the Cottage hospital system can do is list the patients on a ward and add a new patient to a ward. The Cottage hospital core system defines coordinating classes. A class which is coordinate hosp cord, and also a class ward and a class patient. Each ward object has a name, instance variable which is referenced as a string. Each patient object has a name, instance variable which also references a string, and a date of birth which is an instance of the reference type M256 date object. It has simply two use cases: list Cottage wards patient and admit Cottage patient. Let's take the first use case, list Cottage ward patient. For the list Cottage wards patient use case, the user selects a ward name from a scrollable list, and the system displays a scrollable list of the names and ages of the patients on the selected ward as shown by the sketch on figure 2. So you'll have a list of the patients and the list of the wards, and the patients will be also having names given. So it will be just a matter of selecting from lists to be able to list the Cottage patients. And if you want to go over the names of the patients, you can scroll up and down through the list and have a look at the information. This is possibly initial design for this use case. The other only use case is the admit Cottage patient use case. And in this use case, the user enters the patient's name and date of birth, and select for that patient the ward that the patient should be admitted to. And this is shown on the right, initial design for admit Cottage patient use case. And this is the screen to implement that particular use case. These two use cases can be put in a kind of tabbed interface where we can switch from one screen to another as being given in figure 4 here. Now have a look at the Cottage hospital system. We have the coordinating class in this system called Cottage host cord, and that class has two methods. One is get patients, to be able to get the list of patients admitted to the Cottage hospital, and the other one is to admit new patients in that hospital. More details about the admit method that takes some particular parameters as shown in this slide. To be able to list the Cottage wards patients, we need to go through the following steps. The user interface obtains a reference to the coordinating object. The interface sends a message to the coordinating object to obtain a collection of word objects. A list of all word names is displayed to the user. This involved the interface sending a get name message to the word object. Then the user selects the word name from the list of words available. The interface identifies the word object corresponding to the word name selected by the user. Then the interface sends a message to the coordinating object to obtain a collection of patients objects on the selected word. A list of corresponding patient names and ages is displayed, as we saw in the interface designed before. This involves the interface sending get name and get age messages to the patient, because the name and the age are the only information that we are storing in this particular system. This sequence diagram shows the cooperation and the interaction between the interface and the coordinating object in this system. Now we will see how GUI interface for list Cottage wards patient use case can be implemented. On the right, you find a simple graphical user interface for list Cottage wards patients. Things are meant to be kept simple. You find very simple lists with the basic ward names and patients and their ages given in on the screen. Of course, as we have learned in units 11 and 12, we have a long list of swings components in the Java swing library. Some of them are containers, some of them are events, some of them are simple widgets. So we need to somehow, in a way or another, arrange and learn how to lay out these components and use them to implement our interfaces. So laying out is very important. If you want some particular layout, then you will be supported with this layout in the Java library. On the other hand, if you want to build your own layout, then you have to use the null layout and arrange your components on your screens the way you want. You need, in many cases, to build a listener for your actions. So the components you add may sometimes need to be supported with a listener that will listen to your actions and react accordingly. Some of the components that we may use in our design are ways to list the components. So we have a JList, which is very important to use if you want to follow the same design we have proposed earlier. Of course, other components are needed, like JFrame to hold this list. You have JLabel to label the list and label the screen, and so on. So here you find that we have used labels of type JLabel from the swing library, and also we use the list to build scroll bands in the design. We go further with the implementation, and here is some guides of how you can make use of the swing components in Java and under the NetBeans environment. Building the JFrame, and then continuing with the other aspects. As we mentioned earlier, our concern in this unit is not to focus on the implementation and coding of object-oriented systems. We are only concerned about the design, so we just cover how these designs that we are proposing are going to be implemented in this slide. Now give more information about how to display the details of the patients on the selected ward. When the event occurs, the handling code will be invoked. This handling code needs to do the following 4 things. First, it needs to find out from the word list the word, object corresponding to the word, name selecting by the user. Then we need to ask the coordinating object for collection of patients objects linked to that word. Then we need to extract the required details from each patient, because we need the name and the age actually, and we need this to be listed in the last step in a list showing the patients and their ages. These are more details about how to do the previous steps. More of coding, which is not really our concern, but we may have a look at it to take an idea of and learn how things are to be implemented. This is the actual code. Building a graphical user interface should be done in a systematic approach. A systematic approach means that these were steps that you need to follow when you are constructing a graphical user interface in general. We need to consider that when the designer design the user interface, they take in account the needs of the user, as we have mentioned earlier, the environment of the user, the education level of the user, the health situation, being a normal person or disabled person. All this will be taken into account, and to implement it you have to have a systematic way, and we may divide it into 2 stages or 2 steps. First, you need to draw up a plan, and then you translate that plan into a graphical user interface. As usual, we first start with the use case. We understand the use case very well, and we try to provide a suggested screen for that interface. Here we are applying the systematic approach. First, we draw the plan for this particular part or component of the graphical user interface. In step 1, we start with the GUI design sketch and description of the use case, decided what components need to be used and whether any need to be listed inside other components. So here we see our first drawing of a plan and step A of that plan. Now we must consider how the components are nested. So if you look at the view, which is a tree view on the right hand side of the slide or the screen, you see that the GUI for admit Cottage patient is shown to see how these components are nested within each other. Then in step 2, we identify the component properties to decide whether they are fit to our needs and decide how this need to be implemented. Then we build the component properties table where we have the component, the class of that component, the property, and the possible values for that component. Then we decide which component need to be initialized, okay, and what data should be initialized with if we decide to initialize it. Then we follow the plan of identifying the interactions needed, what events can occur, and what are the responses to be for these events. So we have events table where we have the component, the class, the event, and the action to be taken. Admit patient button will use object from class JButton, and the event will be action performed event, which is a kind of listener that will listen for the button action. Then action to be taken is to send coordinating message to the coordinating object. Now we need to apply our approach and translate our plan into a GUI. The exercises 5 or exercise 5 will practice the translate to plan into a GUI. Please refer to that exercise to see how we translated our plan in its 4 different steps into building it as a graphical user interface. Of course, we are dealing with interfaces and we are dealing with data on the interfaces. This data need to be validated, and this input need to be validated, like checking the format, the completeness of the data, the validity of the data, whether we are using the right data or not. And in case that the user entered invalid data, then we have to reject that and give the message to the user that your data you entered is not fitting the format that we are expecting in this part of the interface. As we mentioned at the beginning of this recording, our focus in this chapter and in the whole course in the design only, and how to move that design to some implementation, but the implementation itself is not our focus. This is the end of unit 13. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.